The title of this morning's message is When Rocks Get in the Way. And I was rethinking it just now as I was sitting there because, okay, yeah, it's already been announced, Vicky's not here. And when Vicky's not here, things don't necessarily always go the way they're supposed to. I made sure I got out of the house with shoes on my feet, a tie around my neck, and I purposely put on a croaky today because I knew if Vicky wasn't here, there was a good chance I'll set my glasses down, I'll forget about them, I'll get in the car, and I'll start driving. She'll be the one that'll say, Rich, where are your glasses? Whereas, like I said, with me, I don't need my glasses too much for distance because I can see pretty clearly, just not perfectly. And sometimes we don't realize what we're missing until it's missing there. And sometimes we don't recognize how important things are until they're missing. And that does go along with this morning's message. In Mark chapter 13, it starts out in an interesting way. In verse 1 it says, Then as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, Teacher, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. And all right, we're not there, so we don't see what he's talking about. The stones he's talking about most likely are the foundation stones. These are not what you consider tame-sized stones. Their dimensions are 12 feet by 18 feet, potentially by as much as, I think it is, 37 feet. That's about almost 8,000 cubic feet of stone. If you were to take two semi-truck trailers, the big honking long ones, two of those together are slightly less than the size of one of these foundational stones. When you think about that, that's pretty hefty because we don't think about a tractor trailer pulling down the highway a stone the entire size of that trailer piece, let alone the size of two trailers. That's pretty impressive, especially being they didn't have cranes. Fact is, I had a situation that does sort of relate to this stone situation. I was on the campus one day, and they were building a walkway between two of the medical buildings. And they had the pillar on each side of the road set up. They had the connection from each building out to the pillar on each side. And they had this huge crane out there that is in the process of lowering down the piece that connects from one pillar to the other. It is a really healthy sized piece of concrete because it's got to go all the way across the road and a bit extra. And there's a guy who's standing on top of this piece of concrete as it's coming down. And it comes down, and all of a sudden it stops. It's not because the crane stopped moving. There is slack in the chain now. It stopped because it was about a half an inch too long. And the guy that's on top of this whole thing goes down to the one end where it's not going down because it's over by a half an inch. He starts jumping up and down on it as though that's going to do anything. But he's not going to give up. So he does what every good cartoon does, and he gets somebody to get him a rubber mallet. And he gets that rubber mallet and he starts whacking away as hard as he can, trying to push the concrete back in the other direction so it'll fit in that last half inch. And that was when I realized cartoons aren't made up, they're based on reality, and boy is it funny when you see it happen in reality. That stone wasn't going to move for him. It was way, way, way too big. He just couldn't understand that that was not going to happen that day. Not understand what he was dealing with. That's where these disciples were at. But, okay, let's go down to the next verse. Now that's verse 2. Jesus answered him and said, Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down. Whoa! That's on the negative side. I mean, it starts out with, look at how impressive these stones are. And I can understand that. Except who are they sitting with? They're sitting there with Jesus, looking back at it when he's talking to them at this time. When they're going through, yeah, the stones are right beside it. And that would be an interesting, impressive thing too. I'm 6 foot tall. If that thing's 12 foot tall, that's twice the height of me. That would be impressive walking by it, knowing that they weren't using that big crane to move it, that it was something done by far more meager means. But when they're sitting on the hillside, I find it interesting that the one who made those stones and far more was the one they were saying, wow, look at how big the stone is. You're saying that to the guy that made that and far, far more. Do you realize what you're doing? And I don't think they did. But the cool thing is, Jesus didn't correct them about it. He actually gives them a bit of an answer, and the answer is sort of terrifying. You think it's impressive that these stones are here? Wait till you see what it's like when these stones aren't here. And that's pretty impressive unto itself as well, because that means there's going to be something massive coming through Jerusalem. And it's not going to be one of the pleasant kind of massives coming through Jerusalem. But there's more to what Jesus says. In verse 3 it says, now as he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign when all these things will be fulfilled? And I can't blame them for asking that. To say that something as massive as the temple, it's a 3-story structure. Or at least the original one was. The second one they built, I believe, is even bigger than the first. 3-story structure, stone walls all the way around it, pretty hefty. And it's all coming down. Yeah, I'd like to know, because I don't want to be in Jerusalem when this happens if I was one of them. That's a whole lot of hurt coming through if it's able to produce that much destruction. But like I said, the cool part is Jesus is listening to them already and letting them know, hey, there's something more important you need to know about than just how big these stones are. He's also listening to them here when they're saying, hey, we'd like to know when this is going to happen. And the reason why I think it's important that he's listening is because it shows us what kind of God we do worship. One whose Son can take the time and listen and give a response when they're actually missing the point. And we hear the two-parter in what follows, verses 5 through 8. Jesus answering them began to say, take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and will deceive many. But when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be troubled. For such things must happen, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in various places, and there will be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. He lets them know, you'll hear about it long before it hits. So he's actually addressing their concern. Is this something we need to be worried about? And he goes, hey, chill. Before it happens, you'll know it's coming. But he gives them something more important before that warning. He gives them a different warning that's far more important, just like there was somebody with them far more important than the big rocks. Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and will deceive many. The worst one that comes actually comes in his name. His name was Bar-Jesus. That means son of Jesus. And he claimed to be the Son of God. And it wasn't just he claimed it. The high priest at the time said, oh yeah, this man, he's the Son of God. Now think about that one. The temple is agreeing to somebody being the Son of God after how they're going to treat the real Son of God, the one who would heal, the one who would raise people from the dead, the one that walked on water, the one that they will have already known raised from the dead himself. But they've got somebody that they're going to declare to be the Son of God. And the man that they declare to be the Son of God says, hey, I'm going to take out Rome, and God the Father can sit this one out. That's the arrogance of the one who would be the biggest name that would come along. And when he does that is when God the Father says, yeah, I'm done. Squish. You have the Roman-Jewish war, and as Jesus said, these rocks aren't going to be standing when it's done. They shouldn't have been standing when it was done. When the temple declares someone else to be the Son of God, who isn't feeding the hungry, who isn't healing the sick, who isn't giving sons back to their widowed mothers, who isn't living a life in obedience to the will of the Father. Yeah, it should have all been destroyed. And okay, there's a two-part that's going on here. Because like I said, on one hand, he's telling them something spiritual. Don't be deceived. He's not even talking about don't be deceived by the war crowd that's saying we're going to take out Rome. That's not the concern. Don't be spiritually deceived by the message you want to hear. Because they all wanted to hear, yeah, Rome's going down and we're going to rule. That's not a spiritual message. It might have been tied to one declaring themselves to be the Son of God. It might have been tied to the temple. But the message of God isn't a worldly right kind of answer. It's not the one that says we are in power and we win. That's what the world wants it to be. Jesus doesn't give them the happy answer. He gives them the answer, you'll know when it's coming. But more importantly, he gives them the important answer first. Don't be deceived. Because the truth is, unfortunately, a lot of times, that's exactly what we want. They wanted to be deceived. They wanted to hear Rome was going down. And today, the spiritual message that comes out of many places that's not coming out of God is a message people want to be deceived by. Prosperity theology. God wants you to be wealthy. He wants you to be rich. He wants you to have all the toys. No, he wants you to be in a right relationship with him. All of that goodies pile may come afterwards, but if that's your focus, you're going to miss it completely. Just like if your focus was at that time how good the rocks were. Because the rocks weren't good. They were just big. And the bigness of the rocks didn't prevent what was coming. There was one that they should have been seeking, and that was God. And okay, like I said, we got two things sort of going on here the whole time. The wars, they're a real thing, but even the wars were talked about by God. Jumping back to Ecclesiastes 3:8, it says, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. And that's not because God desires the peace and the hate. That's the way this world is. The wars, they're going to come. The hate, it's going to come. Because this is a lost and sinful world. The thing that is more important than the hate and more important than the wars is the God who has the right answer for all of us. That brings the love, that brings the peace. We shouldn't be seeking, when's the war coming? We should be seeking who's the one who can make the true difference. We're not going to find it in a political party. We're not going to find it in the next self-help book that sells millions. We're going to find it in God and in God alone. We need to be realizing that we can't let ourselves get distracted by the bigness of what we perceive is going on in this world. Because there's always going to be a hot topic that's going to totally destroy everything. Always, while we're here in a world of sin. And if we get distracted by that, we can get knocked off of base on what's really important, and in their case, sitting right next to them, talking with them daily. What they could have and should have been focusing on was the difference and the power that they had. And when I say power, I don't mean miraculous power. I mean power over their own life and destiny eternally. Because the life that Christ offered was going to have impact here and now in the way that they wanted it. But it gave them the same kind of conviction that Christ had. That in spite of how badly he didn't want to suffer the pain of the cross, he still went there for us. Peter's one that's going to face a similar kind of situation. He's going to end up going all the way to Rome. He's going to get crucified there upside down, but before Peter goes, his wife is martyred first. Peter's going to walk the same kind of road that Jesus walked. And it's not because he felt good or because he saw the signs of the times and was able to adjust because of the signs of the times. Because Peter learns and grows, Peter's able to focus on what he should have been focusing on from the start. He's able to take comfort, confidence, and conviction from the rightness he understood when he understood, yeah, I'm not supposed to be looking for the guy that says I'm taking out Rome. I'm not supposed to be looking for some new, better, best that makes me happy. I'm supposed to be taking comfort and confidence that the one who is coming to make a difference is the I am. That was something we talked about in class this morning. That when Christ says, I am the bread of life, who's the great I am? From of old, it's God the Father. Because the one who makes the difference is the Father. He's the one that set the price way back with Abraham. He agreed to go through between the halves of the sacrifice. Meaning, should either side break the vow, may this or worse be done to them? God knew from the beginning, Abraham, humanity, could not pay the price and have it have any value. The only one who could pay the price of that broken vow and have it have any value and meaning was God himself. He agreed to the price all the way back with Abraham. No, he agreed with the price before he laid the foundation of this world. He chose to enable us to choose for him, knowing that by having choice we could choose to reject. More important to him was giving us the ability to choose. He wasn't forcing us into an answer. He didn't force us any more than Jesus said, will you guys wake up and stop staring at the rocks and get a clue about what you should be looking at? Because that's not the way God is. God sent a gentle lamb. A lamb that would not rebel at the last second and say, this is not for me. A lamb that would not, when before Pilate, say, I'm sorry, I'm the Son of God, and you can die. He didn't call down the power of heaven to get his way. He focused on what was really important, the great I am. the one whose will he came to fulfill. And he was willing to stay focused on that all the way to and through the cross of Calvary. The last passage I'd like to go ahead and touch on is from Ezra chapter 9, verses 7 through 9. Since the days of our fathers to this day, we've been guilty, and for our tongue-tied there, we have been very guilty. And for our iniquities, we, our kings and our priests, have been delivered into the hand of the kings of the lands, to the sword, to captivity, to plunder, to humiliation, as it is to this day. And now, for a little while, grace has been shown from the Lord our God, to leave us a remnant to escape, and to give us a peg in his holy place, that our God may enlighten our eyes and give us a measure of revival in our bondage. For we were slaves, yet our God did not forsake us in our bondage. But he extended mercy to us in the sight of the kings of Persia, to revive us and to repair the house of our God, to rebuild its ruins, and to give us a wall in Judah and Jerusalem. And the reason why I want to end there is you need to hear the message that God has been saying all along. And it's not just at the fun, convenient time. Because right there, Ezra's saying, we've been messed up. We've been messing it up. And it's not just we the people, it's we the kings, we the priests, we the whole lot have been messing it up. And even in their mess up, God sought to give them the opportunity to choose for him. God sought to provide them the way out. He was going to produce the worldly salvation at this time when we're talking about Ezra. But they still had the choice. The choice to choose to follow God rightly or to go back to what they were doing that got them in trouble to begin with. Jesus came just like God's message time and time and time again. He came because of the love of God. Because God sought his people even when they were in a lost state. The most important part of the message of the stones and the rocks isn't how big they were, but how big the heart of God was. That even when he wipes out Jerusalem with the army of Rome, that doesn't end it all. While it looks pretty bad and all the apostles go scattering eventually, God's word continues and grows. And unlike those stones, okay, the foundational stones are still there. The ones that got knocked down are knocked down and long gone. God hasn't wavered. Like in the Old Testament, he sought, he made a way. With his Son, he sought and he made a way. There's a reason why Jesus will repeatedly use the expression, I am. It was a reminder. Who's the one that is truly seeking the lost? It's the Father. It is through the Son's acting on the Father's will. We have the opportunity of eternal salvation. We have the opportunity to be joint heirs with Christ eternally. But it all begins when we choose to stop focusing on the big rocks and look at what's really important. Looking at the sacrifice Christ made, that we can accept by taking him on in baptism, becoming united with him, becoming adopted heirs with him, and then choosing to continue in that same kind of walk daily, a walk that is obedient to the will of the Father. Not because we have to, but because he acted in love toward us first. And our response should be like his, in love. If you need to take on Christ in baptism or you need the prayers of the church, you're welcome to come as we stand and sing.